Welcome to the Two Blokes Chatting radio show on 94.7 The Pulse. Music, interviews, news, and, well, Two Blokes Chatting. Now, here are the two blokes.
After some technological problems, we have found him, Mark Gable from the Choirboys. Good morning to you.
Good morning, boys. I had to resort to a phone plugged into a wall.
Oh, one of them?
No, it's old-fashioned.
For young people listening, you used to have this thing where you had to go over to a phone on the actual phone wall and talk into that. Mark, it's a great thrill to talk to you. We have just...
a thing, and it was black.
That's right. Yeah, a bit more recent than the one that they had on the Addams Family, where you had the separate handpiece and the bit you held up in front of your mouth, though.
It was pretty much like that. The number was 939... Oh, I forgot.
We remember the phone, just not the phone number. Hey, thanks for joining us. It's a great thrill to have you on board the Two Blokes Chatting radio show. We're a couple of hacks down in Geelong having a chat about stuff, and you are on your way down here shortly, so we thought that's a really good excuse to have a chat.
Yeah, well, I'm walking as we speak, so I shall get there.
Now, we've often talked about Australian music legends coming out of Adelaide, but I reckon second on the board behind Adelaide would have to be the Northern Beaches, and that's where you guys sprung up from. Is that right?
Well, yes, but I mean, Australia has produced some amazing music. I think most of it's come out of Melbourne. I don't know why. It had to do with coffee. I don't know what it is.
There's some very talented people in this state, you understand?
Responsible for In Excess, Midnight Oil, Moving Pictures, Matt Finnish, Choirboys, and then, yeah, and so on it goes. But Brisbane, surprisingly, has come up with a couple of good bands, which was really amazing, and but anyway, I digress.
No, well, the 1980s, of course, I reckon in some respects that was probably one of the peak times of Australian music. I love the early 70s stuff, but that stuff that you were doing with the 80s, some of those bands that you mentioned, it must have been an amazing time to be in the music industry.
Well, it was, and back then you took it for granted because it was the way it was. I look at pictures now, like Bob King is a renowned photographer and he throws up stuff on social media, and there's a picture of Manly Flicks right in 1980. Now, the first time I saw the Angels and Cold Chisel was at this joint down in Manly, Northern Beaches, and you look at this picture and it looks like something out of 1920, so long ago. But it was a different world, and it's what we did. We used to go out and watch bands and, go to pubs and stuff, and it's just what we did, and we don't do it anymore. It's changed completely.
Well, I was just going to talk about the fashions, the hair and the clothes. I'm not quite sure whether you did things because it was just natural or whether there was a look that you were trying to achieve, but everyone was a little bit different, and certainly some of the hair was wild in those days. Looking back now, can you work out what the hell you were doing, and can you remember maybe some conversations in the group as to what you were trying to achieve?
Well, yeah, I remember us trying to dress up and do things, and I suggested to our first guitarist that he eat hamburgers and smoke cigars on stage.
Hard to sing when you're doing that, though.
Said that he ended up taking his clothes off as well. That was acceptable in the 80s.
Yeah, it seemed to be.
Rob does that quite a bit when he's presenting too. I grew up in Melbourne. Rob grew up just in the Geelong region, and I know in Melbourne, as you said, there's a lot of bands, certainly in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s, when I was a teenager, they were able to get around the pubs, and there was a really great pub scene going on in Melbourne. What was it about the Northern Beaches and Sydney and stuff that allowed that to grow? Was there a great pub scene, live music scene in the region, or was it just something that just happens to be a fluke that's where you all grew up?
Well, it's just, it wasn't such a great scene on the Northern Beaches in terms of there was the DY Hotel, first place I saw Divinals, Manlyvale Hotel, first place I saw Intercept, the Manly Hotel, Narrabeen Antler, first place I saw Midnight Oil, so there were probably about 10 venues on the Northern Beaches that were really popular at the time. But in Sydney alone, there were 250. live venues of original music, like, 6 days a week, 6 nights a week, there were bands performing self-written songs. So really, that's why the Australian music scene was so strong, is because we built that culture up. And then, of course, in the 90s, it was removed through a lot of reasons, legislation, poker machines, changes in culture. But the Northern Beaches was an interesting scene because we were different than the rest of Sydney. We were on the beaches,
Yep.
It was down the beach, you were wearing Speedos, and, it was a bikini time, suntans, it was like, and then to the pub for a few beers, and it was just that absolutely wonderful atmosphere that people lived. And I guess in many ways, in those times, it was a little bit better than Melbourne, because you had to go to Bells Beach if you wanted to go to the beach. It was a bit of a tough one. Mornington Peninsula and all the rest of it still had it happening. I mean, Melbourne came up with the greatest beach band ever, the Australian Crawl.
Absolutely.
A surfy band.
Yeah, they were kind of Australia's Beach Boys, weren't they, in that respect?
Yeah.
They were, yeah. And they were all good looking, and they all had blonde hair. Suntans.
Sounds like me.
I don't know.
Mark, I'm intrigued by that era where it's up and about and young fellas are looking up on stage. Were you someone who saw bands, got excited and said, right, give me a guitar, I'm going to learn how to do this, I want to be part of it? Or did you have guitar lessons, know what you were going to do? You wanted to get into music but didn't know how to, and then slowly evolved into the Choirboys?
The last bit was the slowly evolve thing. That's how it happened. Is that I never had guitar lessons. I don't even believe in them now, because I didn't realise what a roughhouse player I was. Very much like if you listen or watch Malcolm Young play rhythm guitar with AC/DC, it's very similar. It's just playing and playing, and then you learn your own way of playing. And I think that has died out now, whereas a lot of people learn how to play guitar, they learn how to sing. And I just don't believe in that. I just think that all the great music, particularly came out of America, out of Beale Street in Memphis, where I sung karaoke badly, it just developed naturally. And so the Choirboys just developed naturally, because it was that time where I don't remember anybody being worried about money. I don't remember us being worried about real estate and being a success. It was just, you were goofing off and bumping into walls. And even when I've talked to or interviewed Todd Hunter, when I've been doing radio in the past, he said I was just bumping into walls. And that's the way it was. You just did it because you could. But it's like, if somebody's in a band now, right, or they're a singer, you look at them and you go, yeah, but what do they do for a living? It's like not the same as what it used to be, but it was wonderful.
Mark, just on that theme, are you in a position now where you can look back and say, the music industry has served me well, I live a comfortable lifestyle on the back of it? Or have you always had to attach something else to the Choirboys and your individual music skills to really make ends meet along the way?
Not really. I think that, we're one of the lucky ones, and I think that we got some good advice from Vander and Young, and particularly George Young, and I'll do the bad Scottish accent if you don't know who George Young is. He was a rhythm guitarist with Easy Beats, and the brother of Malcolm and Angus Young, and of course they're one of their producers of their first 7 albums of AC/DC. But George always said to me, Mark, never let anybody touch your royalties, Mark. And he was right, because the amount of people that I've spoken to and that you would think have made money out of music haven't, because they've let people touch their royalties, whereas I never have.
The other thing with George Young, and it's interesting because I was going to ask you about this, of course, I never worked out whether he was Flash or the Pan in those 2 songs he did with Vander. But the interaction with Albert productions. I mean, we in Melbourne just look at the Albert family as just being this sort of iconic thing that happened north of the Murray, but they had an amazing stable of artists that you've just mentioned, a few of them there with AC/DC and with the Easy Beats and the guys that came out of that. That must have been a really a major turning point for you, being able to get involved there.
Oh, it was great because it was Herm Kovac, who was a drummer from Ted Mullery Gang, TMG, who were also signed to Alberts, who, you know, I don't know, I met him somehow because he was living on the Northern Beaches. And he said, oh, give me a tape, a demo, a cassette, right? And so, you know, I had a 4-track at home and we were recording stuff, pardon me, and then I gave him a tape and he ran off with it. I didn't even know what he wanted it for. He said, oh, I'm just going to play it to someone. And he gave it to George Young, and the next thing I know, I get a call, that's right, on a green phone with it.
There are young people listening who've learned about cassettes and phones today. It's educational as well.
He goes, oh, Mark. I go, yes. He goes, it's George Young here. I go, oh, hi, mate, how you going? He goes, hello. He says, I really like what you're getting together. I remember those words. And so that's how it started. And
the one that am I right in saying that Never Go to Die was the one that you kicked off with? Is that the big one that's sort of...
1983.
Yeah.
That's right. 39 years ago.
Yeah, back when Rob was in his 60s.
Yeah. I can remember it. I was just coming out of the ballroom dancing era.
That's it. And that kicked off a whirlwind for you, obviously. And, you know, I can remember the Choirboys were always sort of on that end of the scale where they were just pushing the boundaries a little bit in terms of, you know, being a really pub rock band as distinct from some of the other stuff that was going on in the new wave scene.
Yes. Yeah, it was like... I always wanted to do rock and roll. I think that it must have something to do with the Northern Beaches. You know, when I look back at Midnight Oil, I was so rock and roll, really, and I just loved it. You know, because I'm not saying that there are a bunch of untalented people in rock and roll. It's just easier, you know, to beat the living hell out of a guitar. And as one of the guys from the Suite, I can't remember his name now, he was a guitarist. I met him on Rock the Boat, and I said, what is it about Australian music that's different than, you know, everywhere else in the world? And he goes, you invented smashing the A chord.
Okay.
Which is, you know, AC/DC, Angels, Rose Tattoo, Choirboys, just like beat the living hell out of guitars, and that's what we did. It's really aggressive, which nowhere else in the world has.
Well, if Ballroom Blitz is anything to go by, then the guitarist name's got to either be Andy, Mick or Steve, because that's the introduction, isn't it?
It was Andy.
There you go. I knew it had to be one of those three. So, you know, the concept of a pub rock band, there's a real genre of them, and you are going to, in fact, relive that next Saturday night in our area.
Yes, we are. We're going to give you Sydney, Northern Beaches pub rock at its best. It's just a little older and a little uglier, but it's still, I think it's more fun now. And yeah, Geelong is going to, sorry, it's not Geelong. Well, maybe it is, yes. It's going to cop it, yes.
Well, it's actually Ocean Grove, and the folk who are listening in Ocean Grove are going, we're not Geelong, but that's okay. It really is.
I was just...
That's why I said district.
We just chuck region on the end of Geelong, and it covers everyone within earshot, and I think everyone's happy about that. I think Geelong liked the word region. It encompasses a lot, and it's a lot of great acts from not just music, but the town now has got a wonderful arts precinct, and there's a lot of really, really good people that normally we would had to have travelled to Melbourne and other places to see that are happy to come down here, and it's great. And thank you for being another one of those. Just on that, you mentioned the 39-year gap between those days and these days. Obviously, things don't happen quite as easily, but as far as being fit, because doing what you do on stage is a very energy sapping role. Is it important that you look after yourself well, or is rock and roll people just naturally energetic?
I don't think they're naturally energetic. I mean, I looked at No Secrets by Angels, a film clip, and I'm looking at Doc Neeson's performance, and I go, wow.
I wish I had some of that.
Hey?
I wish I had some of that, whatever it was.
Fraught with issues, you know, and it's like he battled that later on in his life. And I think that me giving up drinking 16 years ago, and I've just been dabbling a little bit in having the occasional wine lately, but 16 years, you know, I wouldn't call it a break. I just went back to what I was like before I started drinking, and I think that that's made a big difference for me, because I think that it would be fair to say that naturally rock and roll people, or people that are performers, are generally dysfunctional, and they find solace in drinking and other means in order to placate their disorders, as it will. I've never met such a dysfunctional bunch of people, and such a talented bunch of people, wonderful people, but I wouldn't say that they generally look after themselves. Some do, most don't.
Mark, are you and the rest of the gang good mates, or do you just go off and do your own thing and come together and shine?
We have our moments, and I think that we're generally pretty good. We lost Lindsay, our drummer, last year, and I met him in '76 out at Narrabeen, actually, which is Northern Beaches, if you didn't know. And he passed away sadly last year, we had an 18-year gap where, you know, he left the band and then he came back. We got him back, and you know, so we do our own things. I've done, you know, radio and, you know, emceeing and what have you, but then we come back to together to do the band, and you know, it's a blast. Actually, I love getting together with the guys and, you know, laughing and, you know, picking on them and, you know, talking about old times and new times. So I look forward to that.
So you and, of course, Ian Hume is the other well-known name in the group that will be down here next week. We probably should give a plug for a couple of things. First of all, you guys have released an album which is called Feels Good. It's available on vinyl LP, Rob. That'll make you feel good. That's another thing young people have learned about in the last little while. Tell us a bit about the album and the bringing together of that.
Well, yeah, it was basically, it derived from, because we built a studio at the back of my place, my partner and I, Melinda Schneider and I set it up for live streaming during COVID, and we did quite a few shows. So that album is derived from the live streaming, because it was streamed, it was filmed, and it was recorded on multi-track, and then, you know, we had it mixed, or even, you mentioned Ian Hume, he did a lot of the mixing for that. We decided to release it on vinyl because that's the hip, cool thing now. You know, it's like MP3s, you know, nobody's interested in that. Nobody buys CDs anymore. And of course, they've gone back to the original form of purchasing music, and the hip version now, which is vinyl. And I even put it on the turntable when I received my copy, and I listened to it and I go, wow. It's so weird to hear it again on vinyl, but it's amazing.
Well, pass on our greetings to Melinda, because we've got a sting here where she comes on and encourages people to join our radio station. So at some stage we must have a chat to her as well.
There you go.
Yeah.
I was unaware of that.
Yeah, not now, but, you know, because I've got things to do. But yeah, we'll get in touch with your publicist and see if we can't get a chat with her as well.
I'm kidding. You know, she'll say hi. Hang on, I'll just get her to say hi. Hi later, two blokes. Hey, bloke.
Hello, Melinda.
Hello, Melinda. Lovely to have you on our show. We might get a chat with you another week, but you come on and promote our radio station every now and again on our carts.
Yes, you do. You promote the radio station, don't you? Yes, you do.
Yeah, she doesn't know which station, but that's okay. We can live with that. Hey, the other thing we want to plug is next Saturday night. It's Easter Saturday, folks, so you don't have to go to work not only the next day, but the day after that.
Yep.
You can get down to the Ocean Grove Hotel and you can listen to tracks from the album, but it's going to be a good old-fashioned pub rock and roll night at the Ocean Grove. You can get tickets at geelongtickets.com.au. Tickets are still available, but you want to get in quick because they will fly off the shelf now. That's Saturday the 16th of April. Mark Gable from the Choirboys, thank you so much for joining us for a chat, and also to Melinda. We'll have a chat to her another day maybe. But we are going to play a track from the new album. The new album is called Feels Good. It's an absolute iconic song, but a different version.
Fantastic. And thank you very much, Two Blokes, for having me on. Which is the more important bloke, just before I go?
Oh, Neil's more important. He's the man that attaches his tentacles to all those wonderful, wonderful musicians of your ilk that have come on the show. And we think it's great that you're all still in the industry. And what I love about you all is you're so ridiculously bloody humble for what you've done. And I love that about that. That must be an Australian thing.
To Northern Beaches thing, isn't it?
It is, that's why I noticed when I was in America that people go, they come into McDonald's and go, I'll be having.
I just need to point out, in case the line broke up, I attach my tentacles.
Yeah, tentacles.
Yeah, it's right. Nothing else that I'm attaching to the music industry, you understand.
That is quite true. Mark, thank you so much.
Do you want to introduce your own song? It's called Run to Paradise. I don't know whether you've ever heard of it or not.
No, I haven't, but I'll give it a shot. This is Mark Gable. You're listening to the Two Blokes, and we're going to listen to a song I hardly know, and it's called, what is it called? Run to Paradox?
Yes, that's the one. Thanks, Mark.
Bye, boys.
See you, buddy.
Cheers.